Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. Good morning. Please welcome Sherry Werb, the Director of the Center for Learning, Literacy, and Engagement at the Library of Congress.
Good morning, everyone. Well, looks like we have a great crowd. Love the energy here. And what an important and joyous day for us here at the library. And we're here today to celebrate the one and the only Mr. Jason Reynolds, our 7th National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Woo! Before we get into the program, I want to acknowledge the schools that are here with us today. When I call your school, if you could just let me know that you're here. The Langley School. Loving the energy there. We've got some people to beat here. Hart Middle School. Ida B. Wells Middle School. Walker Jones Education Campus. Columbia Heights Education Campus. Great. Elliott Hine. Wonderful. Elliott Hine Middle School. Kelly Miller Middle School. Okay. McFarland Middle School. Eastern High School. Dunbar High School. Oh, lots of competition here. McKinley Tech High School. Okay, McMillan Homeschool Group. Okay. Ron Brown Academy. Okay, and we're welcoming additional people into the theater now. So let's hear from them. Welcome. On behalf of Dr. Carla Hayden, our Librarian of Congress, I want to welcome all of you to the Library of Congress. This program is being live streamed, so let's all say hello to the viewers at home and at school. Okay, thank you. Okay, it's really exciting here at the Library of Congress right now. For those of you here, you're sitting in the Library of Congress in the historic Coolidge Auditorium. As you heard, I'm Sherry Werb, and I oversee programming at the library. And one of the things I do here is to ensure that young people like you feel welcome here and have opportunities to connect with your favorite authors, visit our exhibits, and hopefully one day you'll come back and work with our librarians and conduct your own research with our collections. You might already know that the job of the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature is to get readers like you excited about reading and writing. Jason does that, for sure. He's a rock star in the children's literature world, and he's beloved by so many kids, teens, and adults. But he's also a person who has unlocked his own story. He's a person who understands that our stories can transform our world. So I wasn't surprised when Jason got right to work after becoming ambassador in 2020. He created a platform called Grab the Mic, Tell Your Story. Jason's idea was powerful and different. He knew that if students got in touch with their own stories and acknowledged that their lives are extraordinary, they would be more motivated to read and write. And over the past year, Jason has toured the country from Mississippi to Maine, from Montana to California, visiting young people in small and rural towns. In total, Jason visited 16,000 students at 47 schools across 25 states. And just for all of you math aficionados, that is enough to fill this auditorium 33 times. Can we please give Jason a special round of applause for that? But Jason, being Jason, he did more. He created a 30-part video series called Write, Write, Write. That's Write, W-R-I-T-E, Write, R-I-G-H-T, and Write, R-I-T-E, and a monthly newsletter called Grab the Mic. Those videos and the newsletters encourage creativity, writing, and imagination, and you can still access those on the library's website if you want to either see them again or see them for the first time. Did you all see the special orange cube just outside the auditorium doors? Okay, well, if you did, or you can on the way out, if you press one of its buttons, out comes a story. Inside these special boxes are stories written by students across America who participated in the Grab the Mic tour. These stories prove that creativity is real and that being yourself is more than all right. It can be life-changing. And today is extra special because Jason is giving each of you a signed copy of the story he wrote for our special story cube. So please pick one up as you leave the auditorium today. That's worth applauding for. Okay, we're welcoming more students to this program today. Welcome. So now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Today, we are joined by two local students who have the opportunity to interview Jason and give you a taste of what a stop on Jason's Grab the Mic tour looked like. So please, let's welcome Maya Stover, who's an 8th grader at Elliott Hine Middle School, and Damar Franklin, an 11th grader Okay, Damar Franklin is an 11th grader at Eastern High School. Lots of love for our students here, thank you. And now, please let's welcome Jason Reynolds.
Y'all good? What's up, y'all? Everybody all right? My mother here? My mother, she made it. Hi, Ma.
Ready?
Hey, go for it, bro.
Hey, again, you know, this would be technically our second time meeting in the first hour. So I guess to get started with a pretty serious question. As a black man in the writing field, what are your favorite topics to think or write about?
First of all, here's the thing. I'm supposed to put the medal on. I never do, by the way. I have it.
Okay, it's okay.
I feel like it's my last day. I should at least put it on. I haven't worn it all 3 years. And we could talk about why later on. I'll talk about why in a bit. But my favorite topics to write about, I mean, so your question is, as a black man in the writing world, what do I like to write about? Well, I mean, for me, the most important thing is to make sure, as I write about black kids, right? Black teenagers, black young people. But I'm thinking about them only as people, right? Like, yes, I'm a black man. Yes, that matters to me, big time. And it matters to me that our young people see themselves as black young people, but more importantly, as people. Because I think so much of our lives, we're trying to convince people that we're that, right? We're trying to convince the world that I am a human being, that I'm a person, that I'm only 14, that I'm only 16, right? That I'm trying to figure it out. I think that young people all around the world, specifically in our particular culture, deserve an opportunity to make mistakes. They deserve an opportunity to see themselves as creative and as goofy as they are, and full of jokes and full of adventure and interests and curiosities, right? And so all I'm really trying to do is show life as it is. I think I'm trying to sort of correct a little bit of what has become stereotypical. We can be and do whatever it is we want to be and do. The two of you are very different. Makes you no less black, right? And so really what we're talking about is humanity. I just happen to be a black man, and so my point of view comes through that lens, you know?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up with that question because me, myself, I'm mixed race or biracial, and I struggle with seeing a lot of different, like, African-American authors, especially in DC. So I wanted to also ask you, what advice would you have for, like, African-American men or biracial men like me?
In life?
Yes.
That's heavy, brother. Like, he's like, listen, I'm so glad I got you here. What is the meaning of life, right? Look, man, at the end of the day, I think it's just important to know to love yourself, right? Whatever your background and your makeup is, that's you, right? And you get to be wholly who you are every step of the way. Every room you walk into that room as you, right? And if they don't rock with who you are as you, that's not your fault. That's not your problem. I think sometimes we feel a way because people don't like who we are, as if it's our fault that they don't like who we are, right? I am who I am. Right now, if there are things about you that you want to change about yourself that you think might be harmful to somebody else, that's different, right? We can sort that out. We should hold ourselves accountable and make those adjustments. But if you walk into a space and people got an issue with you just because you are who you are, the issue isn't your issue. The issue is their issue. And you got to let haters do their jobs, but you ain't got to clock in for it. You feel me? Right? And that's just the way that works.
Hi again. I've been reading your books for a few weeks now, and I've noticed in your book, Ain't Burned All the Bright, with artwork by Jason Griffin, which I really loved. I was fascinated by how you managed to capture some of the most complicated emotions in 3 sentences. Can you share how you managed to sum up such big emotions in so few words?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I don't always know the answer to the question. I think that some of it has to do with understanding that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, meaning sometimes the simplest way is the best way, right? Like if I were to ask during COVID, I would talk to young people all the time and say, how you feeling? And they would say, sad. That's a good answer, right? And I think sometimes we're always looking for the flowery language, and we're always looking for the poetry in a thing, as if sad isn't an actual word with actual meaning and actual weight. It could be argued that the most powerful statement ever spoken by a human being is I love you. And it's super simple. And everybody in here is affected by it when we hear it, right? Or thank you, or I'm sorry, right? Simplicity is a powerful tool. We complicate things most of the time because we actually don't know it well enough. Sometimes when we know something really well, like I'm sad, sadness is the right word. So when it comes to this book, right, and the story of these major moments, right, we're talking about the death of George Floyd and everything that happened during that moment in time, and we're talking about COVID. I think for me, I was trying to dial into my most honest feelings, which were fear, sadness, hope, love, safety, family, right? Basic things that don't require any sort of unpacking. It's like my family is my family, my mother right there. First thing I say is my mother in the house. You know why? Because that's a simple connection. There's nothing complicated there for me in my relationship, right? She's here, I feel better. I'm happy she's here. It's simple, right? I see you, we met backstage, right? We're having a conversation, we're trying to work out the nerves. And after a while, it becomes very simple. Who are you? What you want to be? What you want to do? How you feeling? Right? And I think it's important to remember that life don't always got to be deep. Right? Everybody be fake deep now, right? It's like sometimes it's as simple as thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm feeling a little joyous, I'm feeling complicated, right? And I think that's the way I approach this particular book for sure.
And as a follow-up to that question, how do you think your writing has changed over the years?
I sure hope it's gotten better. You know what I mean? Like you know what? My writing changes over the weeks. It changes all the time. I love to write. I love language. I love literature. I love story. I love music, and I love movie because it's all the same thing. And I engage with it ad nauseum. I engage with it all the time, right? All day, every day, I'm thinking about these things, right? And so it's no different than anybody, like if you're an athlete, like we know where LeBron James is right now, right? Everybody in here knows exactly where he is. He's on the basketball court, he's practicing, or he's getting ready for the game, right? He's working out, he's in the ice bath, he's got the therapist, he's got his chef, he's doing everything he can to prepare for whatever the next game is. That's me. I practice every day, all day. And so it's changing rapidly, and I hope it continues to do so. And when I feel like it hits a stagnant point, I'll probably put the pen down and call it, right? That'll be my cue that it's time for me to hang it up. If I ever get bored with it, that'll be enough for me to be like, all right, well, it's been a good run, right? I had my 20, 30 years, and I'm gonna hang it up, you know? Passion is important to me. To do the things you love is important to me. But we fall out of love. And so if I ever fall out of love with it, I'll be grateful for the time we spent, and then I'll pass the torch to somebody else, you know?
Guess it would be my turn again. You had referenced the death of George Floyd, so this question relates a little bit to that. I wanted to know, how do you think authors should approach injustice in America or the world when writing about it?
So I'm careful to put any responsibility on any artist that they don't want for themselves, right? Because that's not who am I? Who am I to say that every artist should be talking about these things? Look, I'd rather, if you ain't there and your heart ain't there, don't talk about it, please, because you'll do more damage. I'd rather you, and it's not a slight, it's okay if this is not your bag, right? It's okay if this is not what you want to talk about. You should not be held or should be obligated to address these issues. The real question is, does the landscape, right, have enough space for enough artists so that for the artists who don't want to talk about these things, they don't have to, but there are enough artists who do, for there to be like this balance. You know what I mean? And I think that's all I really want. I don't think that everybody got to talk about race relations in America, right? And furthermore, I don't talk about race relations in America. This is a misconception. I think I talk about what it is to be a black boy, right, and a black girl in this country, and there are things in our lives that reflect the racial dynamics of the country. But my job isn't to go into a story to write an essay. My job is to go into a story to write a story. And if the story's not good, it doesn't matter all the messaging I'm trying to put. Don't nobody want to be taught and preached to, and like, I'm not interested in that. I know y'all ain't interested in that either, right? Y'all got enough teachers and parents and people in your lives who tell you all the things you should and should not be doing, what you should and should be thinking about, what you should and should not be worried about, right? That's not my job. My job is to present your life on the page and let you sort it out. How do you feel, right? Like, I can't give you the answer because I don't always know the answer. What I want to do is engage in conversation with you, engage in some discourse using this text, using these stories and these images and these ideas and motifs woven into the metaphors of these lines, right? To figure out what we think collectively, or at least me and that reader in this particular moment, about what's happening in our world and in our lives. Sometimes it's about race, sometimes it's about depression, sometimes it's about love and our ability or inability to express it or access our feelings because of some of the environments which we grew up in. Sometimes it's about fear and insecurity, especially as it pertains to young men who never have an opportunity to be put in a space where they can be vulnerable and not feel unsafe, right? Like, all of these things are woven into the stories, but as stories, not as, hey, young man, you should probably cry a little more. Like, I don't know, nobody want to hear that. But it might be, hey, you're following this character, he's going through a thing that you can directly connect to, and he is stealing his moment to cry. And so just maybe you might be able to share a little bit of that in the privacy of your own home when you're reading this book. Ain't nothing wrong with that, right? That's what I'm more interested in than saying, like, we should be talking about climate change. You know what I mean?
What do you enjoy or not enjoy about working with others, and what other writers or creators have you worked with?
What do I enjoy or not enjoy about working with others? You know, it depends on who the other is. You know what I'm saying? Like, working with others ain't a problem if the others are people I want to work with. If the others ain't people I want to work with, working with others is tough, right?
Sure.
Very simple for me, you know? ultimately, over the years, I think I've become a pretty good collaborator. But I only collaborate with people that I trust and respect, right? As you all should, by the way. I know group projects be wow, right? Yeah, your teacher be like, yo, we're going to a group project, and you hoping, like, please don't put me in a group with him, please don't put me in a group with him. And then they like, yo, you in a group with, you know what I'm saying, Brandon, right? And then you get in the group, and you already know Brandon ain't going to do nothing, right? But you got to get the work done, because if you know, your grade is your grade, and it's a group grade, when really the teacher should be like, let's figure out how to divide the responsibilities so I know how to grade you all fairly, right? But instead it's like, hey, y'all figure this out, right? So for me, you know, I only work with people I respect, people I trust, right? You know why? Because I'm not interested in babysitting nobody. I'm not interested in micromanaging an artist, right? So for me, when I was working with Brendan on All American Boys, I know Brendan. I trust Brendan. Like, I trust Brendan so much. Like, I trust his mind, I trust his heart, I trust his ability. Right? So when he sat down at that page, we never talked about what was going to happen. We had a quick conversations about, like, where's the book taking place, who are the characters, and how many days of the week are we going to do this, and what happens on day number 1, right? And then he moved to Italy and wrote his half of the book. We barely spoke. And I had complete trust that whatever he was making was going to work. It's intuition, it's relationship, right? When it comes to Jason Griffin, same thing. We used to live together. I've known this dude since I was 16 years old, right? There's no doubt in my mind that our collaboration is going to work, because we've been doing it since we were teenagers. We've been collaborating since we were kids, right? I know how he works. I know what he's going to do. I know what he's thinking. I know his style. I know that he knows what I'm working on over here, and then we come together and we make that thing happen, right? The only way that I could dislike a collaboration, and I collaborate with my editors, which is a different kind of collaboration that requires the same thing, trust and respect. I have to trust my editor's eye, my editor's opinion. My editor also has to trust my hand, right, and my voice, right, that I also know this story perhaps better than they do. And so what happens is the editor, a good editor, will ask questions. Help me understand this. Is this what you mean, right? That's true collaboration. Respect. Right? The worst thing a person could do is step into your thing and tell you what you did wrong without asking you to clarify in life, right? And so, like, if we look at collaboration when it comes to the making of art, as the same way we collaborate with our families, maybe not our mamas. For you young folk, I know y'all like, my mama don't want to do no collaborating. She just let me know what it's going to be, right? And this is what we're doing. But think about that when your friendship circles, and for the teachers in the room, this is a big deal, right? Perhaps there should be a little less telling and a little more asking, right? Let me ask some questions. Help me understand what you're thinking, where you're going, right? What your point of view is, and then I can meet you there, right? That's true collaboration. So it's great. I don't have no problems. Never had no bad times with these people. I'm trying to think of some bad stories. There has to be one. But I don't, in my professional life, I don't, and even in my personal life, my friends, I feel very lucky in that way. We don't have any issues with this, man.
Well, next question I wanted to ask, how did your friends or family encourage you to pursue writing, and how are they represented in your writing?
You know what? How are my friends and family encourage me to pursue writing? You know, this will be a very rare moment where I'm going to shine some light on my friends. You know, when I really look at it, my mother is my mother, right? She gave me all the love and all the support and all the encouragement, right? Even in the things that she didn't quite understand. Because how can you expect somebody to understand your dream? It's unfair for us to put that kind of pressure and that kind of responsibility on a person to understand your dream. It's your dream, right? Like, they don't live in your brain. They don't live in your heart. They don't live in your spirit. Why should we expect them to get it all exactly as you see it in your head? It's not fair to these people that we claim to love, right? But the people who I think really sort of were like backbones to me in like the worst times of it all were my friends. My friends were the people who really were like, hey man, we actually really believe in you. We're gonna help you pay some of this rent you're struggling with up here in New York. We're gonna come up here and put some food in your refrigerator, right? Because y'all starving, right? We're gonna put something in here, some food in your fridge for you. We're gonna take you out to eat, right? And the moments I wanna quit, they're the ones who are like, hey man, like, you know, we think you still got it. The only reason I'm sitting on this stage today is because of my buddy Christopher Myers. I would have quit, but this guy, Christopher Myers, whose father was one of my heroes, Walter Dean Myers, who we lost 5-6 years ago. Chris Myers was the one who was like, hey, man, I think, don't quit. You got one more in you, man. You got to at least try one more time. Try one more time. But, like, let it all go. Just write in your own voice. Do your own thing. Like, get funky on the page like you normally do. Just do your thing this time. And because of him and my respect for him and him understanding that I had it, I gave it another shot. And my life changed. Right? I think about sort of like, my best guy, my homeboy Aaron. When I'm in New York taking care of this, chasing this dream, it's him who's taking care of my mom. It's him who's making sure that my people are straight, right? Which means that I can take some of that stress off my plate and focus on what I'm focused on because I know that she's all right, right? This is like my friendship circle, when I really think about it, when it came to the creation of who I became as an artist, and as a professional, they were like, I can't explain the sort of circle that the force field they built around me to make sure that I didn't let it go. Which is a lesson for y'all. Get you a good homie. And you only need one really good one, like a real good one. To the fellas in the room, there's got to be a dude or a woman, a young lady in your life that you could tell you scared. If you don't have a heart to tell another person that you claim to love that you scared, then they ain't your friend. Because the trust ain't thick enough yet. Right? So, like, think about this, right? Get you one solid friend. Well, I mean, more is great, too. It's 8 of us, right? But you get you one solid friend because at the end of the day, even when your family don't quite get it, even when you don't quite get it anymore, sometimes your friends can see things in you that you can't see. It's very, very important. Yeah.
I myself, as a young writer, I have trouble seeing me as a full-time writer. And I was wondering, did you go through this when you were younger? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, because you told me you wanted to be a civil engineer. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I'm a writer. I'm going to build bridges, though. It's complicated. I think, I think it's a different time. The difference is that there would have never been a time when I was in the 8th grade where I even knew that being a full-time writer was a thing. The access and the visibility of writers social media wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. School visits weren't a thing. This wasn't a thing, right? Me sitting here and having this conversation with you didn't exist when I was an 8th grader. That wasn't something that was possible, right? And because that wasn't possible, it would have been impossible for me to know that this could be like a full-time thing. And honestly, I don't even know that I cared so much about that. I think at that age, I was just trying to say my thing, just trying to get it out. I think there was a lot going on at that point in my life. Middle school was wild for me, it was rough. Lots of things were changing in my family. I was experiencing death for the first time. I was experiencing a new school, like just lots of things happening, right? And I was discovering, at the same time, this is the time where I was discovering my love for writing. And all I wanted to do was love it. I wasn't thinking about it as a job. I was thinking about how often can I do this and who can I let read it and what do they think about it. And if they don't like it, it's because they just don't know I'm a genius, you know what I'm saying? Right? Like, I'm thinking about all of this kind of stuff. It wasn't until, I think I was 15 when I was like, I'm about to make a book, right? And I sat on my mom's computer at our house. And back then, like, the paper, the printer paper was all connected. It was one sheet of paper. It was like paper towels. It was like one sheet of, it was like 5,000 pieces of paper connected, right? So if you wanted to make a document as big as a book, you had to then spend at least 6 days just like ripping them apart. Like, it was the wildest thing, right? And so, but I think I was that age, I was around that age when I was like, I want to make a book. And I did, and I made that book. Me and a buddy of mine, Maisha Cherry, we made this book, and then I went to college and I sold that book on campus. And I think that was the moment where I was like, oh, this could be like a thing, right? Like, I was already writing and reciting and all this, that, and the third. But I think when I had a physical object, I realized that there was another level to this that I hadn't considered because there was no one there to tell me that. Who would have come into, like, I can't ask my mother, Ma, how you get a book published? Back then, she'd have been like, I don't know, like, I don't know, right? Like, who nobody would have known back then, right? And you got to remember the internet was new. And not everybody had a website, and Google wasn't a thing. And even if it was, you had to be famous to be Googled. It's weird. Like all of y'all, if I type in any of y'all names, your TikTok gonna pop up, right? Like we know this. But when I was young, nobody was Googleable, right? When I was young. So it's not like I could have Googled how do you get a book published. I wouldn't even have thought to do so, right? It was a very different time. And I'm grateful for that because I didn't have this burden. And so what I would say to you is, one, if you love it, lean into it, whatever that looks like for you, right? So if it's like, I love civil engineering, I'm gonna do this, cool, then do both. It's okay, you can do both of these things, right? Most writers do other things, it's not a big deal. But if you love it, if you love writing, then lean into it. And lean into it with everything you have and have faith in the process. And if you do that every day, you'll be surprised the kind of space it'll make for you when you're 18, 19, 20, 21. You won't even have to worry about being full-time. It may have already happened. It may have already created that space. If you love it, just pour in, right? A ballerina goes to practice, they practice their ballet, they practice their positions, they do all these things, and then at some point, they're prepared to audition for the big show, and they make the ballet, right? But it's all that work leading up to it. That's the most important thing. Focus on that part. You know what I mean? Get good, then get full-time.
Okay.
I think this might be coming up to my last question. At times of writer's block, what would you say is your best method to get through it?
Oh, I just write terribly.
Oh.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If you got writer's block, it's because usually it comes from the fear of writing badly, right? I don't have that fear. I am 100% certain that everything that I'm going to put on the page is trash. Every single time. This is true. People don't, it's funny, I tell this all the time, and I say it all the time, and people are like, no. But no. One of these days, you will read my archives, and there will be all my first drafts in there, and you will realize there is absolutely no reason this dude should have ever had a career. Fortunately for me, there's editing, and that's where I make the books better. But my first draft, sometimes I just write blah, blah, blah for like 3 sentences. Blah, 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 blah. Skip. Like literally like skip. I'll get to this next part later. And just keep moving forward because once you stop momentum, it's really difficult to pick it up. So it's really about allowing yourself to write badly and then going back and fixing it. But you can't fix what don't exist. You gotta get it on a page first, as nasty and ugly as it is, and then you fix it.
Well, it seems like we have to wrap it up. So as a question for my mom,
So we're gonna wrap it up, but I'm gonna ask you this question real quick.
yeah. So my mom wanted to know, do you like mumbo sauce?
Do I like mumbo sauce?
Yes.
I'm from here. What are you talking about? Of course. You know what I'm saying? The question is, do your mother like mumbo sauce?
She does.
Oh, all right. Well, then, exactly. Thanks for the question. But of course, I grew up on it like everybody. Like I hope everybody else grew up on it. I mean, I'm from here, and this is what we eat. Like, of course. Shout out to mumbo sauce and everything else that this city has created and given to the world. You know what I mean? Thank y'all for spending some time with me. I appreciate y'all, man, for sure.
I have to say, that was pretty fantastic. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Jamar. Could we all give them a hand again? Super impressive. Thank you. Jason, we at the library have admired your generosity, your creativity, and your passion throughout your entire term as ambassador. At every turn, you welcomed kids and teens, and you made them feel seen and heard. And you have even inspired the adults too, the librarians, the teachers, the literacy champions, and I'm going to add my name to that list as well. Jason, we thank you for all you have done, and we know you will continue to do. So now I'm going to turn this mic over to you, Jason, so please come up and give us your remarks.
I feel like y'all shouldn't have a see-through podium because then I'm gonna put this here and it's gonna be on camera. You see what I'm saying? But here we are. You know, design. It's a design flaw. You know what I mean? Look, I'm not gonna say too much too long. I want to recap a little bit about of my time, my tenure as the ambassador. It all starts at Union Station, and this is a part of the story that nobody knows, including the people who work here and my publishers. And I was coming into Union Station. I was about to go to New York. I don't know what I was going to New York for. I'm sure it's some kind of business thing. And I'm walking into Union Station, and the person who holds the door for me is Dr. Carla Hayden, right? So it's the Librarian of Congress, who we wish could be here, but we hope she gets well. And Dr. Hayden says, "Oh, Jason, it's so good to see you." Gives me a hug. I'm like, "Where are you going?" She's "I'm going to Baltimore, blah, 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 family, this, that, and the third." I'm like, "I'm going to New York." She said, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool." And then she says, almost as like a throwaway, would you be the ambassador?" And I was like, "I don't know, hit me, call me about it, I don't, maybe," right? And then we just go our separate ways, right? And that was sort of this interesting spark in the beginning of what would eventually become what it became. But it starts with this idea that Dr. Hayden, in that moment, and of course, I know now that it had been a thought, something that was being considered, but in that moment, it felt like being in her face. It was like, "Oh yeah, I can see that thing in you, kid," right? This is the story I tell myself, right? She saw me and I was glowing, and she was like, "You're going to be the ambassador," right? And so shortly after this, I get the call from my publishers, and we start sort of putting these wheels in motion. We start having these conversations. The most interesting conversation to me is the very first real conversation about the consideration of this. Am I going to actually do it? Will I actually? Now, people who don't know, young people, you don't know this, but I'm like busy, right? Busy. And so a lot of our conversations was about, do you have the capacity to do this? Will you take this on knowing that it's going to add a tremendous amount of responsibility to your life, right? Now, I take the call, but it just so happens that where I take this call that would be the meeting in which we're going to work out the nuts and bolts of whether or not I'm going to do this or not, I'm in the hospital. I am in Johns Hopkins, and I am in the corridor of the hospital, standing in front of the visitor's desk, and about 20 paces down the hall, my father is dying, right? And in this moment, and mind you, I'm on the phone with Simon & Schuster and the CBC and every book I read, and we're having this conversation, and I'm sort of like in this weird liminal space, right, where you're like, all right, I need to have this conversation. I should probably do this later, but here we are, and he's stable in this moment, right? But we're going back and forth, and we're talking. And in the moment, all I could think about is all right, my old man's right there, and he's fighting for his life. And I know what he's built of. I know how he's made, right? We're talking about a giant of a man, somebody who lived his life with a certain level of integrity, with a constitution, a hard worker, somebody who did exactly what he said he was going to do and poured himself into it if he said he was going to do it, right? So it was never any halfway jobs. There was never any sort of, you can do a thing at 50%. My father was a full throttle kind of man, right? The kind of guy that when I was being raised would tell my brother and I, take pride in your work, right? We'd be cleaning the house, and my father, sometimes you want to cheat, right? My father's like, come on, man, take pride in your work. Even if it's just vacuuming this floor, you have to take pride in this. You live here. This is your house. Take pride in your work. Take pride in everything that you do, which means there's never an opportunity for you to be lax about anything that you have decided to do because you were the one who decided to do it, right? So you might as well show up and show out because it was your choice to do it. Ain't nobody make you. It was your choice to do it in the first place. So he's down the hall, and I got him all over me, right? I've been in the room. We're talking. We're sort of sorting out things. We're apologizing to one another. We're fixing our relationship. We're doing all kinds of things, and he's still got all this fight in him. The phone rings, and I take this call, and they say, do you want to be the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature? And my response is, I'm not going to do it unless I can really do it. So if we're going to sign up for this, if I'm going to bring my publishers on board, and they're going to have to do double work now because they've got their actual jobs and then they've got this new job. If I'm going to bring, if I'm going to tell the CBC and every child reader that I'm going to do this, if I'm going to commit to the Library of Congress to say that I'm going to do this, we got to really do it. This is not an award. This is not an award, right? I know that we are used to seeing medals as things given to people to award them. This is not an award. This is a very heavy, I mean that physically, this thing is like 20 pounds, right? It's a very heavy, I feel like the smartest rapper in the world, right? Very, very heavy, but it's also very heavy metaphorically. Real responsibility here, hanging around my neck, right? Real responsibility. And so I say to all of them, look, if I'm going to say yes to this, we're going to have to go all the way. My daddy in there, we're going to have to go all the way. That's the only way I know how to do it, right? And they're like, okay, let's put it together, come up with your platform, let's figure out what we're going to do. Now, fast forward a couple of months later, 3 months later, and I'm here. It's January. It's my inauguration. I've said, yes, I'm going to take this on. I've committed myself to this job, this responsibility, this appointment, right? And here we are at the Library of Congress, my dear friend, a sister to me, a mentor to me, one of the closest people in my life, Jacqueline Woodson, is here because she was the ambassador before me, and she's here to sort of give me her blessing, to give me the medal, and push me on my way. And as we're here talking, I'm talking to Dr. Hayden right here, we're having this conversation, and it's time for Q&A. And in the midst of our conversation, I'm talking about my family, my mother. I always tell all my business. Sometimes I feel bad about my mom because I tell all our business all the time, right? But I'm talking about my mom, what we've been through, how much I love her, my friends, and my father, and my family, how much I love these kids, how much I love this work, so forth and so on, right? But it's a lot of vulnerability happening on stage because that's sort of my superpower, right? Like that's my jam. I'm not afraid or ashamed of who I am. I'm not afraid or ashamed of what I am. I'm not afraid of or ashamed of all the messiness happening in here. I'm not afraid or ashamed of any of those things. And so in the midst of our conversation, it goes to all those places. And when it's time for Q&A, there's a young man sitting right here. I'll never forget, sitting right here, and he raises his hand and he says, hey man, he's in the 6th grade, and he says, hey man, like, what you and your mother be doing? Like, what y'all like to do, right? And it's one of these questions that, like, in the moment, I'm happy to hear it because I want to talk more about this person, my mom, right? I'm like, oh, I'm glad you asked, right? But shortly after, I realized he's in the 6th or the 7th grade. And when I was in the 6th or the 7th grade, the one question that nobody would have wanted to ask is about a person's mom. 6th or 7th grade, 8th grade, that's when you like, Mom, don't kiss me in front of my friends. Mom, drop me off down the block, like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, don't do that thing you always do. It's not funny. Like, it's not funny, right? Like, we get in that weird space where all of a sudden our parents become like viruses. It's like, yo, don't touch me unless we're in our house. But when we outside, please act like you don't know me, right? I don't know what happens or what that's about, right? But this young man is like, nah, like, tell me more about your mom. Tell me more about what y'all do, right? And I realize in this moment that this young person, because of my vulnerability on this stage, puts himself in the position to be vulnerable in public, in front of all of his peers, all of his friends, all of his community members, his teachers, everybody. He decides to say, nah, because I love my mother too. And when I meet him out those doors at the end, he says, yo, I just want to tell you real quick. My mother and I, we go to Disney World every other year. It's wow. I love it, right? And this is like his thing, right? And we have that moment, and we keep it moving. And in that moment, I realized, oh, I know what my platform is going to be. Specifically, I know how I'm going to carry it out in a different way. What do I mean? What I mean is I realized that because of our humanity, because of me, like my whole tagline, my secret tagline was, I'm just a regular dude in T-shirt and jeans and sneakers that happens to be the ambassador. What he saw was that. And so what I decided to do for the tour was that. I'm just going to go on the road, and I'm going to have real moments with these young people. I know my job is to sort of encourage them to read and write, right? But the truth of the matter is, I can't encourage nobody to read and write if they don't trust me, if they don't know me, if they don't believe that I love them. All the young folks in the room, you know what teachers got you. Everybody knows. You know what teachers love you. You know what teachers hold you down. You know what teachers you can go to. You know what teachers going to make sure that you're good. And you also know which teachers don't, right? This is a real thing that young people happen to know, right?
And so for me, I know for a fact that I got to figure out how to be on the other side of that wall where you're like, oh, nah, he one of us. He got us. He loves us. He wants the best for us. Now maybe I'll listen to him when he say we should probably check out these books, see what's happening with this writing. Furthermore, all he wants us to do is what that young man did, which is tell him our story, or tell ourselves our story. I got a million stories. I can tell you all kinds of stuff about my mama, my daddy, my friends, my family, my neighborhood. The truth of the matter is, none of those stories are as important as yours. They're not more important as yours for sure, right? They're just as valuable, just as important, just as human. They are our connective glue. Now, I have this all worked out in my mind. We're all on board. I got the whole team around me. We're ready to rock and roll. We're going to go on tour. I decided, even though I live here, and before here I was in New York, and I'm from here, and so forth and so on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the middle of America. I'm going to go to these little teeny towns. I'm going to go places I've never been. I'm going to Utah, and Montana, Idaho, and all these places, right? And of course, everybody like, bro, you sure? Like, that's what you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go to all these places. By the way, this is also in the middle of the wildest political time we've seen in a long time, right? And I'm still like, nah. I'm going out there because I trust young people. I trust the power of humanity and vulnerability. I know this can work, right? But I got to go there because there are kids there too who deserve to have the same thing y'all got, and New York got, in LA, and Miami, and Atlanta. Why can't these kids in these small towns have the same opportunities that you get to come to the Library of Congress? This is in y'all backyard, right? You get to come, it's 15 minutes from wherever y'all from, right? There's no Library of Congress in the middle of Iowa. There's no Library of Congress in Nebraska, right? Why don't they get what you get? They deserve the same things, right? We all deserve the same. Fair is fair. So I say, I'm going to go to all the small towns. I'm going to do no big cities. I'm going to go to the small towns. I'm going to show some love. We are prepared. Everybody's locked and loaded. We all strapped in. And then March comes. This is January, by the way. March comes, and the world shuts down. And COVID is in full force. I remember coming home. I was on tour for a book called Stamped, right? And I get home, and I was like, man, we're going to have to stop the tour, take 2 weeks off, and then we'll get back to it. A lot of us felt that way. It was like, this is going to be a quick 2 weeks, and then we'll get back at it, right? This would be a good 2-week rest, you know what I mean? And then we'll jump back on the road. Of course, we know that didn't happen. And once I realized that didn't happen, I could hear my mother. Listen, and my mother probably don't even remember this, but I tell the story all the time. When my older brother and I were young, my mother would tell us to go outside and rake the leaves. And we would rake the leaves, and my mother was very much a stickler about doing it right? Just like my daddy. I hit the parental jackpot when it came to discipline, when it comes to doing your work, right? And my mother would always say, when you finish, come get me so I can inspect, because she knew her children, right? I need to put my eyes on the work to make sure y'all ain't cutting no corners, y'all not cheating, right? Let me see. So my brother and I, we outside raking the leaves. I'm probably having fun because I love being around my older brother. He's probably miserable, right? We're raking. And we get all the leaves up, and we go knock on the door and say, Mom, we done, can you come inspect? Now, in the time it takes us to get from the yard to the front door, the wind blows. And my neighbor's leaves come into the yard. My mother's like, there's leaves all over the yard. There's leaves here. And of course, we're like, those aren't our leaves. My mother is like, rake the leaves up, right? This is your job, rake the leaves up. We rake again, right? Second draft, right? We raking. All right, big bro say, we done. Let's go get her again. Let's make it real quick, right? We run to the door. Mom, we done. Please come look, right? She comes out, and the wind has blown again. My neighbor, this was always a thing in our neighborhood. This one neighbor, who apparently, she was waiting for her nephews to come rake the yard or whatever, so her leaves would just be everywhere, right? Her leaves are in the yard again. We like, yo, this is unfair. We shouldn't have to do this lady's work. This is unfair, right? We got to clean it again. She's like, yo, the job is the job. And then she says, you have no control over the weather and how the wind blows. And it's none of your business what's happening in your neighbor's yard. You've been given a task, and your job is to complete the task. So as COVID comes down on us, and I got to figure out how to pivot now, all I can think about is my mother and the inability to let myself off the hook. I said I was going to do a thing. I made some promises. I said I was in it 100%. I didn't know this was going to happen, but I can't control the weather and how the wind blows. I feel like it shouldn't be this way, but it's none of my business what's happening before me and the ambassadors before me or who's coming, right? I got to do the task that I set out to do. And so this lovely team around me and myself, we pivot. First thing we do, we got to figure out how to get digital. We create a space, a database. Right. I hope some of you seen it. Some of your teachers, if you haven't seen it, use these in your classrooms. They're super helpful, I hope. And it was a lot of fun for me to create all these prompts to get y'all thinking about writing that are not boring or even that academic, right? It's super silly stuff that's really about imagination and really open yourselves up to creativity. And they dope, right? Like, think about it. Like, if you could get any, it's stuff like this. If you can get any tattoo, if you could tattoo anything on your body, what would it be and why? I know a lot of y'all itching for tattoos, waiting for your chance, right? Well, what would you get? And why would you get it? Tell the story of that. Why is it important to you, right? These sorts of questions, right, built into this database from the Library of Congress that will exist forever, by the way. Please go and take advantage of those things. Then, apart from this job, I developed this game. But it worked in tandem with the gig, right? This game called Brain Yoga. Started to sign on to Instagram and play this game all the time with all these kids, and it kept us all afloat, kept us up, kept our creativity rocking, kept our imaginations kicking, right? All these things that are very important to me at a time where everybody's feeling low and scared and depressed. We can't go outside. The air is poisonous, right? Everybody is terrified, and I'm trying to figure out, how am I still going to do the job? And then these lovely people around me who are keeping me afloat during all of this, they say, we're going to go on a virtual tour. So we set it up where we can go to all these schools. How many schools was it? 37 schools. We did 37 schools virtually, right? Was it what I wanted? No. But did it work out? Yes. And because it was virtual, we got to see not just their schools, but sometimes whole school districts in places that I've never been. Small towns that you got to take. I remember there was this one application that came in and was like, listen, nobody comes here because it's deadly to get here, because you have to come through a mountain range that is so frightening that you might not actually arrive because you might die, right? And I was like, we going, right? We need to get there, right? And that's not a joke. That is Lisa, that's a real thing that happened, right? Like, that was a real application. We got to talk to those kids. We got to talk to kids on indigenous reservations, right? Talk to kids who are living in towns where nobody comes to, towns of 200, 300 people, right? Incredible children who I got to talk to and learn that they just like y'all. Everybody's just, like, all the kids I spoke to had different experiences in terms of their neighborhoods and their communities, but we all laugh at the same jokes. We all want to talk about rap music and food and sneakers. Everybody. It was wild, right? Then we get a moment where my ambassadorship is up. And in the middle of all this, by the way, and I'm going to wrap it up in 5 minutes so we can get to questions. But in the middle of this, I also forged a relationship that I've been trying to forge for years. 7 years ago, I'm at a library conference, and I walked past this strange kiosk. And the people at this kiosk are speaking French. I don't speak French. I wish I did. But they're speaking French. And so I'm intrigued. What's going on over here? There's a machine that's sitting in the middle of where they are, and they're like, we're called short addition. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, what is it? They're like, push a button. Now, the machine that they had these 3 buttons, 1, 3, and 5. I push number 3, and a piece of receipt paper just comes spitting out of it, right? I have no idea what's happening. I think I may have broken it. I'm confused, right? All this is going on. And they say, this is a short story. And I'm like, on this piece of paper? They're like, yeah. And it should take you about 3 minutes to read on average. And if you push number 5, it'll be a longer one, a 5-minute short story. And if you push number 1, it'll be a 1-minute short story. And there's hundreds of thousands of short stories in here, and they're all randomized, and you can just keep pushing them, just keep coming out. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the most incredible machine. This is the most interesting piece of technology I've seen in a very long time, right? And I'm like, how can I use this? How can I work with this? Then I become the ambassador, and I'm like, I got to reach out to them cool French people I met that one time to figure out if we can sort this out, right? And so when we reach out, turns out they were like, oh, well, turns out we are now housed in Philadelphia. And I'm like, that's perfect, because I'm the ambassador, and I want to figure out if there's anything that we can do together to put some of these boxes in some of these schools so that young people can then have opportunities to have their short stories published and put in this box to be randomized, and see how cool it is to know that your story might be read by somebody else in your class or in your town, and you technically would become a published author. To me, this is like, right? And we make that happen. It takes a long time. It's a lot of stuff that has to happen for that to happen. But we make it happen, and they end up making a special box just for my ambassadorship, just for what we were doing, because they believed in the mission. And as my ambassadorship, the first 2 years, as they come to an end, we're still in COVID, and I realize the job's not done. The job's not done. And I think of my mother, I think of my father, two people. Listen, y'all, my mother wouldn't even let me call off work when I had time off, because she said it was irresponsible because somebody else had to then pick up the slack. I couldn't even take time off that I earned, because my mother was like, you're gonna put that work on somebody else. This is how I was raised. I think about my mother, I think about my father, and I say the job's not done, and then I ask for a third year. Let me get one more year. I think the COVID thing is subsiding. I just need one more year, because I still need to get in front of these young folk and make sure that they're good. I need to look them, especially now, I need to look them in their faces to let them know we're going to make it, that we solid, that our stories matter, but more important than our stories, we matter, right, to each other and to this world. And they said, okay. The Library of Congress said, okay, let's roll it through. One more year. And we hit the road. And I got to go to Montana. I got to go to New Mexico. I got to go to small towns in Georgia, all through Kansas, and little towns in Texas. Right? I got to see parts of this country that I've never seen, parts of this country that many of us have never seen, and it turns out it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. The people are beautiful. The landscape is beautiful. The food, right? We had some adventures. It was a wild time sometimes, right? But ultimately, I was welcomed with open arms. I met all these young people, everybody on the same accord. We just want to figure out how to have a human moment with each other. We just want to be proud of where we're from and who we are, our cultures, our stories, our families, our neighborhoods. As proud as I am of my family, a lot of them are just as proud. They just don't get the microphone to say it. That was my job. Yes, reading and writing is what I was called to tell you about, right? But what ended up happening is my job was simply to put the microphone in your faces and say, it's your turn to let the world know you exist. I can't do it forever. It's not going to be on me. It's on you. You are your own ambassador. You are your own ambassador. It's my job to just create a space for you to do so all over this country. And that won't stop when this is over, by the way. After today, trust me, there's travel coming. It doesn't make a difference. I'm still going to do what I have to do, because this is my job. It's my goal. It's my mission. It's my vocation. I'm going to close by saying, I learned this word the other day, sfumato. And it's an art word. It's a word in the art world as a way to discuss how there came this point in time where artists stopped outlining. Right? Like the Mona Lisa doesn't have an outline. It's all soft edges. There's no sort of tracing around it. There's no outline, no thick black line around it. It basically breaks down to the word boundary, borderless, basically. There's no border. Sfumato is a word that I think about when I think about this ambassadorship, when I think about the young people of our country. The borders aren't actually there. I got to see that with my own two eyes. I got to move through places that all of us would assume that I wouldn't be welcomed in. And I was welcomed with open arms. And I was safe and loved and protected. I was treated like a human. I'm not sure that the borders that we put up around ourselves, our neighborhoods, our families, our crews, right? Our races and cultures, our sexual orientations, our religions, I'm just not sure they actually are there. Not in a real way. I think that we can have different colors, right? There can be different textures on the canvas, but there doesn't have to be any hard black line to delineate who's who and what's what. It's not actually that necessary, and it's not actually a real thing when you really get out in the world and see. If there's anything I took from this ambassadorship, the biggest gift given to me is that, and I'll forever be grateful. I'll also forever be grateful for y'all, the young people, the teachers, the parents, specialists, the librarians. Hometown love, which I'm grateful for, of course, and I hope that you're proud of me. Thank y'all. Do I go down or up? I go down here?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. In a bit, Jason, we have a surprise for you. But first, I want to just take a moment to thank some key organizations who made these past years possible. Jason's publisher, Simon & Schuster Children's Publishing. Simon & Schuster went above and beyond. They donated books, staff time, and expertise, and they were invaluable to the Grab the Mic tour. A special shout out to Lisa Morlita and Erin Toller. Let's give them an applause. The publisher and creator Short Edition, who created that special story machine just outside the door. Short Edition brought new energy and possibility to our program, and so a special thank you to Kristen Leroy, Liz Anderson, and Melissa Falcu. The Capital Group Companies Charitable Foundation and Dollar General Literacy Foundation both provided general support for this program. I want to thank the library's literary initiatives and informal learning teams, especially Anya Creighton, Sasha Dowdy, Lauren Rozak, Monica Valentine, and Allie Hartley-Kong. I also want to thank the library's Development Office, Communications, General Counsel, and Grants and Contracts Division. Thank you. Last, but certainly not least, we are so thankful for the library's program partner, Every Child a Reader. Carl and Shayna, you are tremendous, and we could not have accomplished the National Ambassador Program without your dedication, your commitment, your deep insight into children's literature. And in fact, I'd like to invite Shayna Burkhead, Associate Executive Director at Every Child a Reader, to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. On behalf of Every Child a Reader, I'm honored to be here today. Honored to be a part of a program that inspires young people and gives voice to their lives. And it's always a great day when I get to see Jason in action. In the book Belonging, A Culture of Place, Bell Hooks says, "We chart our lives by everything we remember, from the mundane moment to the majestic. We know ourselves through the art and act of remembering. Memories offer us a world where there is no death, where we are sustained by rituals of regard and recollection." This quote has been in my head ever since Jason's last ambassador event this October in Blakely, Georgia. In his 3 years as ambassador, Jason's dedication to his mission to go to rural locations and speak to young people directly has been unwavering. Everywhere he went, he encouraged young people to tell their own stories, to share the things, both mundane and majestic, that matter to them, that make them who they are. As ambassador, Jason set out to lift up the voices of young people in this country. His approach to being ambassador was a bit subversive. He is not one to walk into a room and tell you you have to read a book. He approaches kids with the deepest respect and understanding, meeting them where their young minds and hearts are at. Jason said it best in an interview early in his ambassadorship. He said, "I'm just here to bear witness to their lives, because I believe that it is in bearing witness that everything is made real." So, it is through that bearing witness, through the rituals of regard and recollection inherent in Jason's Grab the Mic, Tell Your Story mission, that he has left a mark on thousands of hearts and minds, including my own. It is with so much gratitude that Every Child a Reader and the Children's Book Council will be donating 250 books each to Ballou Senior High School and Bell Multicultural High School in Washington, D.C., in honor of Jason and his work as ambassador. It's just one small tangible way for us to say we love you. And speaking of love and gratitude, I am so incredibly grateful for everyone at the Library of Congress, Anya and Clay in particular, for their amazing work in this fulfilling partnership. for Candace McManus, Jason's manager, for unending coordination of this busy man's time, and for Lisa and Aaron at Simon & Schuster for their hard work, friendship, and dedication to Jason's vision. I also want to thank the amazing teachers and librarians who helped coordinate the events that Jason did over his 3 years as ambassador, both virtual and in person. I could not have done my work without them. And Liz and the Short Edition team for getting Story Cubes into 9 amazing schools this year. Speaking of those events in schools, we have a surprise for you, Jason. We're really excited for you to see. But first, I want to just remind the amazing students in this room to stay in your seats. At the end of the program, you're going to be dismissed by school. So, Jason, this is for you.
I've learned so much from young folks around this country and all over the world. But I think that as an adult, I have to exercise a certain kind of humility around you in order for me to be able to get that story out of you, right? And so my goal is to say, listen, I'm the newly national ambassador of young people's literature, but I'm not the ambassador for young people. That's you. You are the ambassador for yourselves. My job is to create a space as an advocate to make sure that you can champion yourself in a way that actually works. That's all. I want you to love my stories, but not nearly as much as I want you to love your own, right? Love your stories. There's freedom there. There's power there. My job is to let you say, is to give you the microphone and say, yo, I'm 15. And these are the things that I care about. This is my name, my city, my town. This is my family and my story.
Thank you, Mrs. Jason. Thank you for stopping by Blakely. Thank you for inspiring me to be a greater person. Thank you for making me feel like I'm taller. Thank you. Just thank you for making me better.
Hey, Jason, I want to thank you for coming to our school.
Thank you for your visit, Jason Reynolds. Los Fresnos, Texas says thank you, Jason.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much for coming over here. It was such a pleasure and honor to be able to sit right next to you and ask you fun questions.
So I've been trying to figure out, how do you say thank you to somebody for doing something really awesome for you? It was almost a year ago that, Jason, you came to do a virtual visit with us here at Gowanda Central, just outside of Buffalo, New York. To say that your visit had a huge impact on my students, my community, and myself is an understatement. Your authenticity in your writing, your compassion for young people is just incredible. So I guess all I really want to say is thank you.
Señor Jason Reynolds, gracias por inspirar e iluminar a nuestros estudiantes por a través de su libro. La historia de Will en Long Way Down es una historia con la cual muchos de nuestros estudiantes pudieron relacionar. Varios estudiantes nunca habían leído un libro antes de leer Long Way Down, y gracias a su historia muchos pudieron conectarse con varios de sus personajes. Nuevamente le doy gracias y lo felicito por su trabajo y dedicación hacia los estudiantes de todo el mundo.
I understand you made 7 separate virtual appearances and you connected with students from 11 different school districts, and you held events in small towns across Illinois, Mississippi, Wyoming, South Carolina. Why did you pick small towns?
You know, before I got this role as the national ambassador, I was fortunate to see so much of the country. And what I realized was that children exist everywhere, right? I live in a big city. I feel very fortunate to live in a big city. I live right down the street from your office, you know, and I'm grateful to be a Washingtonian and to be around so much busyness and so much energy. But the truth is that literacy and literature and authors they're not relegated or specific just to big cities. There are children everywhere. In small towns all over America. These are all still special places with their own identities, and they also deserve the experience of meeting an author or talking about literacy and literature, or listening or having someone outside of their community listen to their dreams. And I really wanted to shine a light.
Nobody comes to Mississippi, and nobody families come to Mississippi, and we're really glad that he came here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming, Jason. When you came here, I was happy to see you, and when you told us about how it took you a long time to just start your career in writing, that inspired me a lot. So thank you for coming, and thank you for giving us a listen like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
It has been an incredible 3 years. I have loved serving the country's children. I have loved serving the literary community. And I'm forever grateful and forever changed for being the ambassador in the time in which I was, which was actually in the time of COVID, which was complicated and a necessary and welcome challenge. That the ambassadorship as a whole, just for those of you who may not know, is a position granted upon you by the Library of Congress, in which my job is to serve as the person who is most encouraging and trying his best to perpetuate reading and writing amongst America's youth. It is no small task. It is not an award. It is a responsibility. And I hope it could be one of them at some point. And whoever's next, I can't wait to see who carries on this mantle. I'm forever, ever, 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 ever grateful.
As we conclude out the formal part of Jason's ambassadorship, I'd love to welcome you back on the stage. Please take a bow and let's give him a little love.
Hello, school groups. Hello.